Hello and welcome to Connect with Adult Ed. This podcast, we did change the name to better reflect what we do and to make it a little easier to find when you're searching. So new name, same concept, same people, generally adult education practitioners, conversations on what is going on in our field, what are some interesting perspectives, and where do we see it going? General stuff.
Still in the Merit podcast. Yep, just a different name.
So today we're here with Cyndy Ratliff. Cyndy, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you today?
Well, and of course, Jamie, my producer and sometimes co-host.
Good morning, everybody. Hi.
Yes. So this is a first in a couple of conversations that we want to have about adult literacy. This is something we haven't quite hit on yet, but it's a really big part of our field. And we want to get to know it better. So like just for context, I was an HSC instructor, then I moved to admin. Now I'm a professional learning coordinator. So I kind of moved in those spaces. I was also a volunteer for many years, but not adult literacy. This is something that's way outside of my know-how. Jamie, you have any experience with literacy?
Just in the admin part. So, I worked for a nonprofit adult education program that eventually got adult literacy funding. And so on the administrative side, because I was already a program director at that point, I was administering the adult literacy component of the program. So myself have never taught adult literacy, although when I did teach, I taught all levels. So there was definitely the lower levels included in that, but not specifically just adult literacy.
Okay, so basically we know nothing. That's really the conclusion here. We know very little. We want to learn more from you, Cyndy. That's why we're here today. That's kind of my approach to this kind of stuff, is really like, I don't know this thing and let's find out more about it. I love it. I love learning. So Cyndy, can you tell us about yourself? Like, how did you get into adult literacy?
Okay. Well, first, thank you so much for having me today. I got into adult literacy purely by accident. I am a late to continued education in life. I didn't even begin college until I was in my 30s. Former military, ran a security company, worked wholesale flooring I was a sales rep for wholesale flooring for 15 years. So I was very career oriented for a long time until the market fell out in 2008 when my company went under due to the market. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go to college. I was like, well, let's get my education on. And so I decided to do that. So I started attending C&M for my prerequisites because it was a lot cheaper than going to UNM or one of the other four-year institutions to get my prereqs done. Well, while I was sitting there, I noted that people weren't reading to the level that they needed to be in college, or they weren't speaking English and couldn't understand. So, and I had been out of math for so long, I was taking a bunch of ABE math classes to get up to college level because I had been so long, and well, I was never really good at math anyway, let's just be honest. So really wanted to get a little more into that. But what I noted is while I was sitting there, I was noticing that other adults in my class, that English wasn't their first language. And so they were having issues even understanding the professor. So I took a couple of girls under my wing just to say, hey, let me explain this so you can understand it a little bit better, because I know that you don't understand what she said. So we would meet after class and we would do that. Well, I went from the math class to a reading class. Well, it was the 1101 class, I believe, the beginning class for language arts. And in the class, there were 3 girls in the class that didn't understand what was going on. So really was just starting off by tutoring and mentoring a couple of ladies. And then what I noticed is then they started bringing their husbands. And then I ended up with around 36 people that needed help with English. So I had their library, they would C&M let me use their library to help teach English there. And then actually Reading Works, which is now Ethos, formally certified me to be able to tutor. So I started doing that, but I was actually working in the clinic because I when I first went to school, it was for labor and delivery, and then found out how disgusting that was and got away from that. But yeah, I did work in the clinic there, and actually I ran the clinic office there for about 3 years. And then a friend of mine worked at C&M. She's a dean now, actually, at C&M, Melanie Viramontes. So she was talking to Muncie Hansen, who used to be the director at Reed West, and she needed some help. So she said, if you really want to help people, come out here for 3 or 4 months just to help me out until I can find somebody. And I said, that sounds great. So yeah, I thought, well, I'd be at Reed West for 3 or 4 months, and now it's been 11 years. So
That's what happens.
sorry, that's a very long story into that. So here I am today. I mean, started out as the program coordinator, did that for about 8 years, and then now I've been the director for a little over actually 3 years now.
Well, I mean, it's a long story. It's an interesting story. I'm imagining just a really windy road that got you to adult literacy. And so you volunteered, tutored all those people, like
Yeah,
at CNF.
yeah.
Wow. And you mentioned that you were certified as a tutor. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, the certifications we used to do are different than the ones that we do now. So it just means that you've been through the training through Pro Literacy. So Reed West is accredited through Pro Literacy.
Mm-hmm.
They used to be back in the day Pro Literacy of America, which is where Reed West originally got their name. Was Reed West Literacy Volunteers was our original name. And then we went into when we incorporated, we was turned into Reed West Inc. And then it was Reed West Adult Literacy. And then when I took over, I changed our name to Reed West Adult Literacy Center, considering we do so many different things here. So
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you did mention that you're the director. So again, I'm approaching this as someone who knows literally nothing about literacy. I know some things. Real quick, just what does the job entail of a director that's different from a coordinator?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Thanks for that question. Let me start by saying this. Reed West has 2.5 employees in total, and we are the largest independent adult literacy program in the entire state with 2.5 employees, with 320 students and a little over 100 volunteers. So what that entails is me being everything. So I am the executive director. However, I'm also the secretary, the librarian, the student coach, a tutor, a maintenance janitor, and I'm also the motivational speaker here. So I don't do one thing here. None of us do.
Yeah.
We all do a little bit of everything. I hate when people ask me what I do because let's be technical about this. I am a secretary. I am a glorified secretary because really what I'm very, very passionate about is our students. I'm passionate about the progress that we're making. I have to say, I really miss being the program coordinator because as the coordinator, you get to see things, you get to see all that wonderful progress, and you get to be in the mix of it. And since I've taken over as the director, I miss that engagement. I mean, I miss that being able to see all that progress, and you get to all those, let's just call them fluffy moments because that's what I call them. So I'm like, I miss all those feel good fluffy moments. So really what I do is I keep our bills paid. I try to recruit volunteers and students. I do speaking engagements all around Rio Rancho, Albuquerque, Bernalillo, Tijeras, you name it. I'm kind of all over the place. I'm also a part of Jamie's advocacy committee. So I kind of have my hand in a little bit of everything. I'm also a member of the chamber out here. So I'm part of the nonprofit alliance out here as well. So I am a part of 7 different committees right now. So outside of Reed West. And it really does help me keep engaged with the community and with our volunteers. And really the outreach is probably, I would say, the majority of what my job duties really are is how do I get people engaged? I mean, we are the worst kept secret in Rio Rancho, and I don't know why. I mean, we really try to tell people, look, we're free. What a lot of people don't know is adult literacy is for everyone. I don't care how educated you are. I don't care what you know or what you think you know or what you don't know or what you think you don't know. We do a little bit of everything here. So what adult literacy really is we help people with speaking English. We help people with understanding English. And we're talking about, we call it survival English when they come in. So we always have them sectored in 0 to 1. Those are people who don't know anything, they can't speak English, can't read English, and a lot of times they can't even read in their own language. So we do English as a second language or English language learners. So, and those are different. So when they have a second language, we put them in survival English. And that survival English is what happens if you get pulled over by the police? What happens if your house catches on fire? What about money? You need to know about money, and you need to know about time, especially if you start working. So we go over these things with them. So we also do workplace readiness with them, so they know what is the attire, what's PC, what's not, what's the cultural differences that we have working environments here as opposed to where they are. So there's a lot that goes into ESL, a lot. Idioms, pronunciation. We do a lot of TPR here, and that's total physical response. So when they don't understand, it's using your body. I am one of those people that I have to talk with my hands. I just have to do it. And that was because I taught ESL for so long. I think that I just got so used to using my hands and my facial, and I got very animated. And that's what you do with the 0 to 1s. Then when you get into the 1 to 2s, those are the intermediate ESL people. And that's when you're getting into more of the reading and writing things, because really as 0 to 1s, how do we keep them safe? That is our sole mission for a 0 to 1. How do we keep them safe? How do we get them acclimated? And how do we get them culturally engaged into our community? So, and also with parent-teacher conferences and stuff like that, because a lot of times they'll come over here and they've never been to a parent-teacher conference, so they don't speak English or they don't understand what they should be asking. So we also do that with our ESL students as well. And we do mock interviews as well, just so they know what to ask if they have things that they need to know about with their children. And then we do basic literacy, which is your basic reading and writing skills. So we start with basic alphabet, numbers, reading, writing up to a certain level, which is usually around 3rd grade. And then when they go into a 3 and 4, then they're advanced. Then that's when we start easing them into basic literacy. Then we actually get them into basic literacy, then we start grammar and all of that fun stuff. So mechanics really starts with ESL 3 to 4. And then our ESL 3s to 4s and our BLs are all the same. So our introduction, our level 1 BLs are kind of the same students. So working on the same stuff.
So, wow. No, this is really fascinating stuff. Like running the gamut. Would you say primarily, you said you guys serve about 320 students. Is that primarily ESL or is it kind of a mix?
Well, I would say pre-pandemic, we were probably more, about 3/4 of our program was ESL. However, I would say it's pretty half and half now, BL and ESL. We're kind of in the middle. We have noted a lot of teenagers coming back due to COVID. They dropped out during school and they come back and they're like, oh, I need a high school equivalency. And we're like, yeah, there are other programs for that. But then we test them and realize they're in the right place. We have found out, unfortunately, that more high schoolers that dropped out during COVID are reading around anywhere between a 5th and 8th grade reading level. So they're not even at a high school standard mostly. So then what we do is if we do get the ones that are prepared for that, then we usually either send them over to YDI or C&M.
All right. Wow, that's 50. That is high. That is so high. So those are the students. So the students that what I'm getting at from you is that the students that dropped out during COVID were probably in a really vulnerable place and not at level. And then moving to a digital format just kind of cemented their fate, essentially.
Yeah. Well, then also remember this. A lot of the teenagers these days have got some form of PTSD. And I don't want to really bring that to the forefront. However, we do know that isolation caused a lot of issues. And we also know that so many of them dropped out and they have classroom anxiety or they have, other things going on. And then some of them actually just got to the point where they didn't want to be around people. And that isolation, I think, played a key role in some of this. And the amount that they were being monitored online while they were attending classes, I think also was another thing that was to their peril because they were able to play on their phones. They were able to play their games, so the amount of education that was being done at the time they were being homeschooled, I believe, was a detriment to them. We are trying to force them to go back to high school. Our ultimate focus is please go back to school. Please don't look at us as an option yet. If you have the option to go back to high school, please do it. 100. We're all about them getting educated in high school as much as we possibly can.
So are these like generally conversations? So if that's the goal for the students that are coming in at a high school level, like you still have opportunity, is that something you guys talk to them about before getting with a tutor, or is it like a repeated message?
Yeah, so I should probably tell you when somebody first comes into Read West, we spend approximately 3 hours with that student. And it's getting the intake done. It's getting an assessment done. It's finding out what are their literacy goals? What do they want from us? What can we do to help them? And when we get all of this done, when we find out, let's just say we find out they are at still high school age, what we do is we look at that. We TABE test our students when they come in. And the ones that tell us they want to do high school equivalency, we use a high school equivalency practice test to prep just to see kind of where they are. After all of this is done, then we do orientation with the student. And orientation is done by we sit across from them and we talk about their goals and we talk about what are the things that are hindering them. What is it that has caused you to come this direction instead of going the other direction? And then there are a few other things, we talk to them about self-care. What can they do to be successful? Because it really is important that their self-care be there, because we know a lot of times, especially as teenagers, we don't really, as a teenager, did you think about what you were doing this summer, or did you just do it? we try to say, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? When it's said and done, career-wise, where will you be? And, encouraging them to have that. We encourage them to dream. What is it? What's your dream? What do you want to do? Because we know whatever is impactful to them, that's what they'll study. So we ask them, what are your hobbies? What are your dreams? What are your goals? What do you want? And then we know when we do meet with the tutor, we say, look, these are the things that they're interested in. So if we know that a gentleman is interested in mechanics, we're not going to give him a gardening book to study. So these are the things that we need to know. So if we get the things that mean something to them, then we know it'll be impactful. And we know, especially if it's reading, if we need to encourage somebody to read, I'm like, I don't care if it's a graphic novel, a magazine, I don't care. Just read 20 minutes every day.
So from what you're telling me, it's very much an adult learning framework or adult learning theory, which, really is essentially become in tune with the student and what their goals are and contextualizing those goals so that they're more attainable. And that's amazing. That's a lot of one-on-one work with students, like just from what you said before, like 320 students. So you're spending around 3 hours with 320 students.
Yes.
Which, of course, I can't do math in my head. I'm not ashamed.
I'm breaking out my calculator. I don't either.
Hours.
And that is just for intake assessment. That's not even the tutoring hours yet.
Right. Yep.
So, wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And a really great example of just getting to know your students. I think that's something, I think programs approach it very differently in different ways. And I have heard anecdotally, it's just really hard, especially in a large program.
Yeah.
So,
but you have to keep in mind, these people feel ignored.
You're right.
They feel ignored and invisible. And so we want them to be seen. We want them to feel seen. We want them to feel heard, because really that's the first step to education. I mean, as an adult, really, why do we disappear? Because things happen in our lives, and we become invisible because we have children, or we get into relationships, or we start a job that is so overpowering, or you just start feeling so bogged down, you become invisible in your own life. And really, when somebody decides to come into Read West, it's because they've made themselves a priority. So we want to give them a voice, and we want to be the listener. And usually that helps your retention rate too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So you've also mentioned, of course, literacy. That's kind of, if you don't know anything about literacy, you at the very least know that they're made up of a lot of volunteer tutors. And
your tutors.
Only volunteer tutors. Could you talk just a little bit about that? Just like, so you have this approach from the onset of, we're getting to know our students, we're giving them this opportunity to be heard, to listen to them, and then you talk to the tutors about it. What is that process with tutoring, in the sense of how do you keep that mindset with volunteer tutors, especially tutors generally tend to be people who have more time, so sometimes they're retired.
The recruitment process and maybe the tutoring process.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So volunteer tutors come to us. So we advertise in about 30 different places, well, a little over 30 places now, for volunteer tutors. So the volunteer tutors come by way of word of mouth, church, advertising in newspapers. We do online recruitment like Volunteer Match, AARP, Rio Rancho Chamber. I mean, we're kind of all over the place. We're in churches, community centers, schools. Our word of mouth really is the biggest form of recruiting that we have. And then after we recruit, all of our tutors must go through training because we want to know that they know at least what we want them to know. We never tell the tutor that they have to teach in a certain way because everybody has a different teaching style. And remember that the more comfortable they are with their own style, the better teachers they are. So you let them have their own style. We just give them the tools and the resources that they need. So recruiting is the hardest thing to do for volunteer tutors. If you ask any of my staff or any of the people who know me, they say, Cyndy is always on. I don't care if I go to a restaurant, if I go to a grocery store, I talk to people. Hey, have you ever thought about volunteering? Especially if I'm standing in line, I hear somebody say, oh, it's summer. I'm stuck in my house. I don't know what to do. I know what you can do. You can tutor online. During the pandemic, I revamped Read West a little bit. I put us as a hybrid program. So I made a lot of our classes go hybrid and then all online. And then we started tutoring online only. So I said, you know what, if there's a will, there's a way, and there's definitely a will. So we'll have a way. So really, when it comes to volunteers, you have to make sure first and foremost, are they comfortable using technology? And if they're not, are they trainable? And then are they want to be in person only? Well, that's fantastic too, because Read West has a facility that has 5 one-to-one rooms in it, a library that we do classes out of, and a classroom. So we try to encourage people to meet one-on-one here. But when the tutors actually they are recruited and they meet their student on the very first day, oh, by the way, that 8 hours of training we do for the tutor, it's really so we can get to know the tutor too. We want to know their temperament. We want to know, are they loud? Are they soft-spoken? We ask them, do you care if it's a man or a woman we place you with? Do you have a problem with any specific type of person that we would need to know about? We do have a few tutors here that have Q clearances that cannot tutor certain students because of their Q clearance. So those are things that are very, very important. So we spend the time with the student, but we also spend an ample time with that tutor just to make sure we know them. The other thing is we background everyone. Students, tutors, staff, everyone that comes into Read West has a background check done on them, just so we know who they are. We do not take violent offenders, period. Once the recruiting of the tutor happens, though, we place them with a student. On the very first day that the student and the tutor meet, it's a meet and greet only. They're just getting to know each other and they're re-going over the goals log. They go over it together because what the student tells us and what they tell their tutor sometimes don't match, because as much as we do not want to be intimidating, we are sometimes. And I think it's the testing and the intake and everything. So that very first day, they just get to know each other. They talk about what they really want to do. So what they do is they initiate that long-term goal right off the bat. So after they have the long-term goal, then they set 2 short-term goals to get to that long-term goal. And that's all they work on until they get to that long-term goal.
Wow. That's a long-term relationship, essentially, then.
And it also helps your retention rate when you do it that way, because a lot of people don't want to stop until they meet at least one goal usually. So if you set it up that way, your retention rate actually, we've been doing a pilot on this for about 5 years now. So just to see, and really it does help your retention rate. If you do it this way, there is a goal in mind that not only the student wants to get to, but also the tutor wants to get to.
Wow. So smart.
I really
calculating.
love that. Yeah, just that emphasis on those 2 things, the relationship and the goals, just makes such a difference.
This interview will continue on the next part of this episode. Thank you for listening to the NMEA podcast. Connect with Adult Ed, the NMEA podcast, is a project of the Propel Professional Learning System and is funded by the New Mexico Higher Education Department's Adult Education Division. Thank you for listening.